Shalom to everybody. We appreciate. As you know, Beit was destroyed because of the conflict that the Jews. The Gemara said because unfortunately they did have Gemara said because they did have people did have emunah. Emunah means to have bitachon to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, believe in Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that he's the one that's running the show. And no competition. Don't think that this guy is against me. Is causing damage to my business, everything else. That's what the Gemara says. And because of approach, because of parnas, so people they do things that they are not supposed to be doing it, and yet that makes machloket between the people, and it makes a sinat chinam. So because of that, so basically, in these days, we have to focus. If we want that Beit HaMikdash should be built, right? We want to be fasting for Tisha B'Av. So that they said, if you could fix the Ahavat Chinam, that love your friend like yourself, that itself it brings the Mashiach. Not there's the Gemara said that if you keep 2 Shabbat, Mashiach is going to come. But another way that you don't have to keep even Shabbat, but being Mashiach is through Ahavat and to have achdut. That's to have achdut. The Gemara said in time of Ahav, the king of the Israel, he told Eliyahu Navi that what's in the Torah is not true. He said, why? Because he said, we do not keep the mitzvot. We are over the Avodah Zarah, but we go to the war. We are victorious. We go. There is a rain. He said to us, it says, you don't keep the mitzvot, no rain. But why we don't? We are Avodah Zarah. So he said, because why? Because you have achdut. Because you support one each other. You want support that. That's greater than keeping Shabbat. That and now what does Ahavat Chinam means? Not to say talk lashon hara about each other, to help each other one another. So these are the things that you have to work on it, and that brings and to have achdut. So we asked Rabbi Lodon to please help give us a lecture about this Ahavat. He said Ahavat Chinam that we should have it, and through that, Be'ezrat Hashem Barach, we did our tikkun of the Churban Beit HaMikdash, and Be'ezrat Hashem is going to be built. B'imhera v'yameinu amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Mopari, for giving me the opportunity, to speak about the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael and Achdut Yisrael, the love of a fellow Jew and the unity amongst the Jewish people. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to discuss in simple terms what the fulfillment, how we fulfill this mitzvah, and also then we go according to the explanations of the Arizal. When we compare it, we actually see there's a world of difference between the simple explanation and the way it's explained by the Arizal. Let's start from the source. Actually, in the Torah, we have 2 commandments. So both in Parashat Kedoshim, one is the negative commandment and one is the positive commandment. The negative commandment is in Parashat Vayikra. It's in Perek Yutet Pasuk Yud Zayin that it says, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. You can't hate your brother in your heart. So that's a negative commandment. It means you can't hate another fellow, another Jew in your heart. And then the positive commandment is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your fellow just like yourself. So there's a negative commandment, there's a positive commandment. Basically, when somebody shows his love to another Jew, he's actually fulfilling 2 commandments. He's not transgressing hatred to another person, and he's actually doing also love of a fellow Jew. If somebody, God forbid, hates another Jewish person, he's transgressing 2 commandments. Number 1, he's not doing V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, also is transgressing Lo tisna tachicha bilvavecha. So you see, when it comes to this pasuk, we have a few questions. 2 of the questions that Ramban, the Nachmanides asks, he says God created us, he knows the nature of a human being. Naturally, I love myself more than other people. So how could God give us a commandment, love your fellow just like yourself? It's a commandment which is impossible to keep. And definitely God, knowing who we are, how could he give such a commandment? He has a seemingly very strong question second question that he asks, the Gemara brings a story. This is in Gemara Bava Metzia. I think it's on page 62. Daf Samech Bet. The Gemara brings a story. Imagine two people, God forbid, are stuck in the desert. They only have one pitcher of water, one flask of water. And they know they're going to be in the desert for 2 weeks, for example. If they're going to share the water, they will both die. But if one person is going to take it, he's going to live, but the other person will die. What is he supposed to do? So it's a machluket of Ben Petura and Rabbi Akiva. Ben Petura says it's better for them both to take the water, and if they die, they die. Rabbi Akiva says no. The person that owns the water, the flask, he should take it for himself. And what's the reason? Because chayecha kodmin, your life comes first. That's the halacha. Halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. So here the Ramban says, we see clearly, according to Rabbi Akiva, you could love yourself more. Because it says you take the water yourself. If I'm supposed to love my fellow just like myself, Rabbi Akiva should have said either take it yourself or give it to your friend. They're both equal. From the fact that it says you could take the water yourself, so that's a proof that actually you're allowed to love yourself more. So how could the Torah say, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha"? It can't mean the simple terms. Another thing, that actually this question is brought from the Mezritcha Maggid, student of the Baal Shem Tov. He says regarding action and speech, you can command somebody. When it comes into feelings of the heart, you can't command somebody to love something. Now, I always bring an example. Some secrets. My wife doesn't like hard-boiled eggs. She hates it, right? So you could force her to eat it, but you can't tell her, hey, you have to love eggs. If you don't like it, you don't like it. So now how could the Torah come and give a commandment, love a fellow just like yourself? If I don't love that person, I don't love that person. That's it. How could he give a commandment regarding feelings? So the Ramban actually gives an answer. And then Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to go into the Kabbalistic answer, step by step. The Ramban says, honestly, only the Ramban could say this. The Ramban says the commandment of love your fellow just like yourself is an exaggeration. The first word that the Ramban says, haflaga. If you look in the Art Scroll translation in English, I wasn't sure, does really the Ramban say it's exaggeration? The Ramban says haflaga is an exaggeration. The Torah never meant in your heart that you have to love somebody just like yourself, because of the questions that the Ramban asked. How is it possible to command to love somebody else like yourself? Impossible. And the Gemara says that your life comes first. So it's an exaggeration. Fine. No, it's a very, very big chidush, big thing that the Ramban says, because the Torah does use exaggeration language, but regarding stories. Nobody comes and says keeping Shabbat is an exaggeration. Chas v'shalom. Puran Tefillin is exaggeration. Nobody says that. But because of these questions, the Ramban says to love somebody in your heart, just like yourself, is not the literal meaning of the Torah. What the Torah means, you should love your friend in all matters of life like yourself. Basically, treat him like you want to be treated. I could control my actions. I could control my speech. So, just like I don't like somebody to say Lashon Hara about me, so don't say Lashon Hara about somebody else. If, let's say, somebody needs a loan, if I need a loan, I love somebody to help me, to give me a loan, so give him a loan too. So in my heart, I could love myself more. But when it comes to actions, to treat somebody else, treat him the same way you want to be treated. The language of the Ramban is, you should want everything for your friend the same way that you want things for yourself. So based on this Ramban, all the questions are answered. The Torah is not giving you a commandment regarding your heart. You don't have to love him just like yourself. You could love yourself more. Now we understand what Rabbi Akiva says, your life comes first. What does Rabbi Akiva say, chayecha kodmin? Because in a place that both of us can't live, one is going to die, of course, your life comes first. When you could both have the same thing equally, you could have it equally. Also, the question of the Maggid of Mezrich is answered. We asked the question, how could the Torah say, love somebody, you can't command regarding heart? It's not regarding your heart, it's regarding an action. How to deal with that person. Anyways, that's the way the Ramban explains this. So Be'ezrat Hashem, there's a lot of parts to this, but hopefully, within the next 35 minutes or 40 minutes, you're going to actually go the way it's explained, by the Arizal and also the Ramak. The Arizal comes with a very big chidush. The Arizal says, the way the neshama of the Jewish people work, it says all of us together make one big, gigantic spiritual body. which is what is the neshama of Adam Arishon. The Arizal says, before Adam Arishon, before Adam sinned, his neshama was an all-inclusive neshama, included everybody. And he was supposed to have only Jewish souls. Once he ate from the fruit of the tree, so impurity entered his body, then that gave place for the other neshama to come. But before the sin, he only had the neshama of the Jewish people, and he actually included everybody within him. And with this, the Arizal explains, one of the questions that we have, usually it says, when somebody does a sin, he gets punished. I don't get punished for wrong thing that somebody else did. So there was not supposed to be any death in this world. Adam ate from the fruit of the tree, so death came to the world. I didn't eat from the fruit of the tree. Adam and Chava ate. They should die, but their children should live forever. Why is there a death for everybody? So the Arizal says, because Adam Arishon's neshama included everybody within it. We were not there physically, but our neshamot were part of the neshama of Adam Arishon. So at the time that he sinned, so that actually affected every single neshama. So now what are we? Now that we have, Ken Yirvu, 15 million Jews, a little bit more than 15 million Jews all over the world. So the Arizal says each one of us is like a small limb of a big body. When you have a body, there's the brain, there's the heart, up to the toenails, or the nails of the feet, which are the lowest part of the body. Same thing, there is in the neshama, there is many, many levels. For example, Moshe Rabbeinu was the spiritual brain of the Jewish people. Aaron HaKohen was the spiritual heart. In every generation, the leaders are like the brain of that generation. So each one of us together are a small limb, and together we make that big, gigantic, the spiritual body. And the truth is, what the Arizal says, even though he says the Chiddush of the Arizal, but it actually has a source in the Medrash. Medrash Tanchum and Parshat Naso over there explains, before God created Adam Arishon, when his body was just the body without the neshama, he showed him all the future generations. And he told Adam, you see, this man is from your head. Like he showed the tzaddikim of the future generations. This one is like your heart. Obviously, we all know Adam Arishon is buried in Marat HaMachpelah. It doesn't mean his physical head. It doesn't make sense. What it means is his neshama, the limbs of the neshama, the brain part, the intellectual part of Adam, later on came out to be the head, came out to be like the leader of that generation. So actually, you see that already the Medrash hints that that we are all like different limbs, and Adam Arishon's neshama was divided in future generations. There's also another hint to what the Arizal says in Gemara Yerushalmi. Talmud Yerushalmi is trying to discuss how could I hold myself back from taking revenge. Somebody hurts me, it's very hard to hold myself back. So Yerushalmi brings an example. If let's say somebody was doing some construction, whatever it is, and by mistake, he actually hurts his left hand. Let's say he's banging a nail and he strikes on his finger. The left hand is not going to strike back on the right hand because they're the same body. So we see clearly Yerushalmi is saying that two Jews are like two hands of the same body, limbs of the same body. So even though the Arizal, makes a very big thing out of this, but really what the Arizal says, we had in Gemara Yerushalmi, it's actually in the Medrash, and with this, Arizal explains many, many things. The Gemara says, for example, in the Masechta Sanhedrin and other places, that Jews are responsible one for the other. Meaning, when you do a mitzvah, you bring benefit to the entire Jewish nation. When somebody does an avera, does a sin, God forbid, that actually brings punishments on all the Jewish people. So the question is why? So actually, before the Arizal came, the Medrash gives an explanation, but the Arizal's explanation is a lot deeper. The Medrash says, imagine there was many people in a boat, in a cruise. Since everybody has their own cabins, somebody goes in his cabin and he starts drilling a hole. So people say, what are you doing? He says, what do you care? It's my cabin. It's my place. I want to make a hole. So he said, fool, if you make a hole and water comes into the boat, into the cruise, the whole boat is going to, sink, not just your place. So what do we see from this Medrash? That, we all have the same destination. God created the world. We're in a ship. We are traveling. The end destination is when Mashiach will come. That's the Olam Haba. When somebody does a sin, actually that holds back Mashiach from coming for everybody, not just for that person. But according to this Medrash, we're not really connected. We're just on the same journey. We're going to the same destination. But according to the Arizal, is a lot deeper. The Arizal says, based on him, that all the Jews are really connected. We are like small limbs of a big body. So let's imagine if there is, God forbid, a certain illness in one part of the body that actually brings weakness in the entire body. Even if somebody has an ingrown toenail, which is all the way down in his toes, but the pain is so much that he can't even concentrate in learning. So even there is a disease in one part of the body, a certain illness, it actually brings weakness in the entire body too. So when a Jew does a mitzvah, because we're all connected, that strengthens the entire Jewish nation. When God forbid somebody does a sin, because he actually, whatever, gets, so to speak, a spiritual infection, so that actually has an effect on the entire Jewish body, on the Jewish nation. Also, with that, they explain another thing. The Arizal, without an exception, like all of us, like any Jew that davens 3 times a day, he would say the vidui too. He said Ashamnu, Wagadnu. I don't know exactly which version he prayed, but definitely at least in the Sephardic, prayers, one of the things that we confess is ni'afnu, I committed adultery. No question that Arizal never committed adultery. Now, let's say even if someone amongst us doesn't do adultery, but there's a possibility I looked at things that I'm not supposed to. Maybe I spoke indecent words. So it's true, physically I didn't do adultery, but with my eyes, with my speech, maybe I did adultery. So somehow we are guilty of it. But Arizal was not in that level at all. So why would Arizal come and say, Ni'afnu? We committed adultery, never did it. So Rab Chaim Vital, student of the Arizal, explains, because since we are all connected, when one Jew does adultery, that impurity affected the Arizal too. With that, they explain another thing too. Why did the Arizal say Ashamnu? What do we, all of us? Gazalnu, we stole. If I stole, why do I say Lashon Hara about the other Jews? I should say Gazalti, I stole. Why do I say Gazalnu? It's not right for me to say Lashon Hara about the other Jews. But again, according to the Arizal, is understood because we're all one. We're all connected. So therefore, when a Jew does stealing, that impurity affects the entire Jewish nation. So that's according to the Arizal. The Ramak goes one step further. The Ramak says it's not only that each one of us is a separate limb, but actually in every neshama, in every Jewish neshama, you have a part of every other Jew also. So it's not like, you have a hand, you have a feet, and together make one big body. But in every Jewish soul, there is a part of every other soul too. With that, he actually explains a very interesting Gemara. We're going to come, because I should bring another explanation. The Gemara says that if 10 people come to the synagogue, right? If afterwards even 100 people show up, the first 10 get the reward of the 100. So simply learning it, the Gemara doesn't really mean 100. What if 500 people come? So you get the reward of the 500 people. So then the Ramak says no. When you have 10 people in a synagogue, right? You have 10 people. Let's say Reuven has his own neshama, and the other 9 are within him too, because we're all connected. They're gathered in the synagogue. So let's say Mr. Reuven has his own soul, and the other 9 are part of him too. 1 plus 9 is 10. When you have 10 people, so you have 10 times 10, you have 100 people. So they already get the reward of 100 people. According to the Ramak, is exact. So the Ramak says actually in every Jew, you have part of everybody's neshama, part of it at least is in there. So that Tzemach Tzedek, actually, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, brings a example, from the body to understand that a little bit better. When you look at somebody's body, you have separations, you have differences. You have the hand, the feet, the brains. But he says a very interesting point. He says in the hand, there is a life force of the feet and the rest of the body too. Why? Because where is the life? It's in the blood. The Torah says, Kidam hu nefesh. So actually the life force through the blood circulates through the body. The same blood that goes into your hands is the same blood which is in the feet and the other parts of the body. So it comes that in the hand you have the life force of the feet too. You can't say the different lives because it's the same blood. So same thing here that Tzemach Tzedek says, we could also explain regarding the Jewish people, is not only that each one is like a little limb, but in each Jew you have part of the neshama of other Jewish people too. So with that also explains why Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, we are responsible one for the other. and everything else that the Arizal actually said. So, based on this, you could actually understand when the Torah says, love a fellow just like yourself. According to the Ramban, it's an exaggeration. You don't really have to love the other Jew just like yourself, because the Ramban is explaining the simple explanation. But Arizal is actually going deeper. He says, don't look from the limitations of the body, look from your neshama. If you look at it that way, actually, you have to love a fellow Jew just like yourself. Let me just give a small introduction. There's a pasuk that says, Zot Torah Adam ki yamut be'ohel, right? So when it says Torah Adam, this is a law of a human being. So I think it's brought down in Kisvali. I think it's in Kisvali. I might maybe making a mistake. When it says Torah Adam, that means the Torah is like a human being. And the Arizal says just like the human being has two parts. There is the body and there is the neshama. The Torah also has two parts. There is Galia Shebe Torah, the revealed part of the Torah, which is the body of the Torah. And then there is Nishmata de Oraita, the neshama of the Torah, which is like the inner parts. Now, what's the difference? The Galia, the revealed part of the Torah, has to do with our body. For example, laws of Shabbat. You can do this, you can't do that. Tefillin has to be on your hands. So, the revealed part, the halachot of the Torah, they deal mostly with the body. Of course, they deal with the neshama too. But it's telling us what to do, what not to do. However, there is a nishmata doraita, there is like the secret parts of the Torah, the kitvari, which that actually is the neshama of the Torah. So when, let's say, you look at the Torah from the body side, from the external side, our bodies are separated. My body is not your body. That's what the Ramban says. So according to the Ramban, since our bodies are separated, if I'm limited to my body, it's impossible to love another Jew just like myself. But according to the Arizal, that we look at the neshama, we're looking at the Jewish soul, and actually the Jewish souls were never separated. First of all, we are different limbs of a big body. In each Jew, you have part of another Jew. So actually, me and you are included in each other. In Reuven is the neshama of all the other Jews. So if chas v'shalom, I hate somebody, I hate part of myself. When I love somebody, I'm saying I love myself because it's part of me. We always say, if you're such a great person, sacrifice yourself, love the other person. According to Kabbalah of Arizal, you're not sacrificing yourself. When you love another, you actually love yourself. He's part of you. So that's what the Arizal is teaching us. If you look from the viewpoint of the neshama, so then actually loving a fellow Jew means to love exactly another person like yourself because he's part of you. Definitely it's very difficult to get to that because we are, limited to our physical bodies. But, honest to God, that's what, if they would teach this Arizal, from childhood, when we actually enter yeshiva, if they would teach the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael the way the Arizal says, I'm sure that a lot of sinat chinam would be avoided. Because we really don't know that, the neshamot are exactly one. If you think into it, it doesn't even make sense to hate another Jew. Okay, we're not going to become Moshe Rabbeinu. We won't become the Arizal to get to that level, but at least the sinat chinam will be minimized and neutralized a lot. So that's, the first part. If there's any questions, please ask. God willing, we're going to get to the next part of the lecture about, how important it is to say V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha before we pray. If there's any questions, please go ahead before we go further. I don't judge anyone. If I judge you, God judges me. I don't want to be judged. No questions? Everything is simple.
One person has 15 million neshama in inside.
Part of the other 15 is within you, exactly. And the Tzemach Tzedek brings it from the life force, the blood. Same blood.
When you get to one Jew, and then you feel that it's Jew before even know it, that's what it's connecting to you.
He's connected to you.
It's connected.
You know what? You actually see it. When you see two Christians meeting each other, right? One is from England, one is from South America. They don't feel connected. You could see a Jew from South Africa, could even be a black person. Doesn't matter. Again, I'm not a racist, God forbid. Could be, I don't know, Spanish Jew. It doesn't make a difference. You feel the connection. Why? Because our neshamot are really one. With this, to also explain another thing, actually, according to simple explanation, we'll go to the next part. The Medrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu had a question. He said, I don't understand. Why do the Jews deserve to be punished more than any other nation? Any sin that the Jewish people did in Mitzrayim, the other nations did it worse. Theft, they did worse. I don't know, adultery, the Jews didn't do any adultery at all. There was only one case of adultery that was done. So what are the Jews suffering? So when he saw that Datan and Aviram, they went to Paro and they actually said Lashon Hara against Moshe Rabbeinu, he said, now understand why the Jews deserve to be punished, because they speak Lashon Hara. This is one of the proofs that Chafetz Chaim brings, that if we speak Lashon Hara, we deserve to suffer in exile. So all the Mefarshim ask, excuse me, other nations don't say Lashon Hara? Look at all the news, look at CNN and all the other news. They constantly talk Lashon Hara. So the same question comes back. Why was suddenly Moshe Rabbeinu convinced that the Jews deserve to get punished because of Lashon Hara, but he wasn't convinced because of any other sin? Because the other nations do 10 times worse. So when it comes to Lashon Hara, other nations do worse than us. So the answer that they give is because other nations, their souls are not united. It could be they unite because of a goal that they have together. I'm saying they want to make a country, so they unite. But really, they're not united. The Jewish people, their souls are one. So when I speak Lashon Hara, actually something which is internally united, I'm dividing them. So the damage is a lot more. That's why really Lashon Hara doesn't apply amongst the other nations. They're not really united. It's their goals that makes them united, but they're not internally united. And we see it openly. When Jews are in trouble in Israel.
For instance, if a Jew wounded in the border of Israel, when we get hurt.
Exactly, we help. I'm sorry, I'm saying, but look at Arab countries. When there's an attack on one Arab country, they don't help each other. Jews, in America, even the most, reformed Jew, when our brothers in Israel, the soldiers, other people need help, right away we help, because we are really internally connected. Anyways, going to the next part, you see, there's another thing that the Arizal was Machadesh, and the Sephardic Jewish people, anybody that follows the Arizal, they do this too. When we pray, the Ashkenazi brothers don't have it. They don't have this in their Siddur. But the Arizal says before we start praying, we have to say, Hareini mikabel alai mitzvat aseh shel v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that I take upon myself to love every Jew just like myself. And Sephardim add, Hareini ohev kol Yisrael kegufi v'nafshi. They make it a lot more clear. But even the Ashkenazi Hasidim, at least they say this pasuk. Hareini mikabel alai mitzvat aseh shel v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Why do we choose this mitzvah? We accept this mitzvah more than anything else. I don't say I'm going to accept to keep Shabbat. I don't say I'm going to accept to keep kosher. We say only I'm going to love every other Jew like myself. And the Arizal says because when you love another person, then your prayers are accepted. If God forbid somebody hates or doesn't like another Jew, then there's a question if his prayers are accepted. Why is this mitzvah so crucial, so important that the prayers should be accepted? So we're going to actually give an answer in a simple explanation, and then also the way the Arizal explains it, based on the explanations of the Arizal, how beautiful it is. So the simple explanation is, there was a story, with the Rabbi Rayatz, was the previous Lubavitcher Rabbi, his name was Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. So they call him Rayatz, means Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. His father was, Rabbi Shalom Dover, Rabbi Rashab. When kids become bar mitzvah, they always ask something. They ask you to buy them computers. Maybe when I become 16, buy me a car. But in the Rabbeim's house was different. Every time a son became bar mitzvah, the custom of Chabad Rabbeim was that a child would ask a question, and the father would answer. So Rabbi Rayatz at his bar mitzvah, his father Rabbi Rashab asked him. He says, Yosef Yitzchak, ask me a question. So he says, my question is, why before we pray, we say V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha? Why is this so important? That before we start praying, we have to say this. So Rabbi Rashab gave a very simple explanation. Honestly, we all understand. You don't have to be a Kabbalist to understand that. He says that when Jewish people pray to God, we are like children in front of our parents. Now, obviously, every parent wants to fulfill and give whatever his child needs, right? That's what we call God Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Why do we call our Father, our King? Because a king could do whatever he wants. He has all the money. But sometimes he doesn't do it. He doesn't maybe care about the people. A father wants to give everything to his child, but sometimes doesn't have the ability. If he doesn't have the money or the means, he can't do it. But God is both. He's Malkeinu, he has all the means, and he's also Avinu, he wants to give us everything. So actually a father wants to give everything. However, if the child is really causing a lot of pain to his parents, he needs to be disciplined So unwillingly, the parents don't give him what he deserves. So that's what the Rabbi Rashab said. When we pray, especially when we get to Shmoneh Esrei, which we ask God for all our needs, is like a child going to his parent, to his father, to his mother. God wants to give us everything that we need. But if we actually cause a lot of pain to God, then we need to be disciplined. We don't get the answer. What's the biggest pain to a father? Not like the Persian community, oh, my son didn't become a doctor, my son didn't become a lawyer. That's not the biggest problem. You know, they say a joke. There was one time a Persian lady, it's a joke, it's not true, was taking the two kids on a stroller, right? So then another lady says, oh my gosh, your kids are so cute. What's how old are they? So says, oh, the lawyer is 2 years old and the doctor is 3 years old. Already from childhood, they wanted to become a doctor and a lawyer. That's not the worst thing. The biggest pain, that a parent has is if the children don't get along. Could you imagine two brothers don't get along, and then Friday night, the parents invite one kid and he says, no, if my other brother comes, I'm not coming Friday night to the house. There was a family that was like that. I knew them when I grew up, in one of the cities in New York, one of the boroughs, whatever. It's really, really painful. The biggest pain that a parent has if the children don't get along. So when we daven Shmoneh Esrei, that's what the Rabbi Rashab said. When the Jews get along, so God says, thank God. God doesn't say thank God, I'm sorry. He says, whatever word you use. He has pleasure that, wow, my children get along. So when he sees the Jews get along, he has the greatest pleasure, gives them whatever they need. However, if there's sinat chinam, there's hatred or any type of hatred, then God is in pain, so to speak. He sees one child doesn't get along with the other child. So then God doesn't fulfill what they want. That's the way the Rabbi Rashab explained it to his 13-year-old child, the Rabbi Rayatz, to understand in simple terms. Now we're going to come to the Kabbalistic terms, Be'ezrat Hashem. What really, why is V'ahavta l're'acha kamocha is so important. So see what Kabbalah explains. Prayer is not only asking God what I need. Tefillah, according to Chassidut, comes from a different word. Tefillah means attachment. When we find, for example, I think it was Rachel that had a child, they named him one of the, I'm sorry, not Rachel, one of the maids. They named the child Naphtali. Why did he say Naphtali? It says, Naftule Elokim Niftalti, Imachoti. It says, I was attached to my sister through help of God. Because Leah had many children, Rachel had no children. So now that he had a child, he says, I attach myself to my sister. I have a child just like my sister brought children to Yaakov. So Naftule or Tefillah means to get attached. And Chassidus explains, imagine somebody, a prince, is thrown in a pit, in a jail. Like, it's really awful, especially the old jails. That you had rats running all around. Once in a while, they give him permission to come out of the jail and actually meet his father or mother, the king or the queen. Could you imagine at that moment how happy this child is? He's out of the jail. He's next to his parents. He's getting united with them. So obviously, he's going to be very happy. So the neshama is in pain because it's within the body. Right? There's eating, drinking, going to business. It's not what the neshama really likes. When it comes to times of prayer, actually, we come out of that prison. And we're becoming one with our God. That's the beauty of tefillah. Halavai, we should feel like this when we pray. Many times we do when we go through trouble. So whether we have a lot of kavanah. So then, what happens is during prayer, our soul unites with God. So Kabbalah explains, the concept of Knesset Yisrael. Simply, Knesset means the Jews. But Kabbalah explains Knesset Yisrael is the source where all the neshamot come from. Or if the ones, that are a little bit familiar with Kabbalah, it's called Sfirat HaMalchut. It's the sphere of Malchut, that's where all the neshamot come from. So during prayer, our neshama gets connected to the source of all the neshamot. The reason why it's called Knesset Yisrael, Knesset means Knisa, gathering. That's where all the souls are. The only way I can unite with God is only if my neshama is healthy. How is a neshama healthy? Only when it's united with all the other souls, just like a physical body. How is the body healthy? When there is interconnection between all the limbs. When the blood goes all over. If somebody doesn't get blood into his toes, God forbid they have to cut his toes. So a healthy person is where the blood circulates everywhere. So the only way we can unite with God, get the Naphtali to become one with God, is if actually the soul is complete, he's healthy with everybody else. The moment that I hate someone, God forbid, that means I'm cutting him off from myself. Because I don't like him, so I'm cutting him off spiritually. So when I go in front of God, I'm not complete. Now, why do we need wholeness, completeness during davening? So here the Tzemach Tzedek actually connects it to what it says in the Gemara. We all know this. We don't have the Beit HaMikdash, there's no sacrifices. What takes the place of the sacrifices? The prayer. When you brought sacrifices, the Kohen had to be complete. He couldn't have a blemish. The animal had to be complete. You can't bring an animal with a broken leg. So by tefillah also, the only way we unite with God is only if the soul is complete. So if before prayer he says, I love every Jew just like myself, so at that time all the neshamot are connected. So when he goes in front of God, that's it, he's whole, he's complete. But if he hates another person, so he's missing, he's lacking, he has a blemish. Because God is complete, he can't, he doesn't dwell on a place that there's no completion at all. So according to the Arizal, actually, it's a lot more than, and that's why our requests are not given, because I'm not allowed to go to the level of Knesset Yisrael where all the neshamot are. And actually, Tzemach Tzedek adds another word. Just because I hate that Jew, chas v'shalom, doesn't mean that his neshama is not next to God. All the neshamot are there. It doesn't mean because this guy is not a good Jew, his neshama is not next to God. His neshama is pure, is next to God. So for me to be connected, I have to be united with all the Jews at the same time. So this is the second thing that we learn about the importance of Ahavat Yisrael. If we have it, we actually get united with God. And because we're united with God, all our prayers will be answered. As the Arizal says, if there is Ahavat Yisrael, so then it's going to make Peiri Lemaila, it's going to make a fruition, and our prayers will be answered. There's another part that if you have time, we go through it. Otherwise, if you have a question, we give answers. We could leave this for another time. If you have time, we go through it. Any questions? No questions? I hope it's simple. Yeah.
When we say does it mean no matter who is he or is black or white or what religion is?
Means a Jew.
Is that true?
A Jew. You have to love everybody, but you don't have to love everybody like yourself. Other nations, non-Jews, you're supposed to love them, but like a human being, not like yourself. A Jew is your brother because the neshamot are one. So it has to be just like yourself. Let me ask you, if let's say you love your sister more, are you racist? If you love your wife more than somebody else, are you racist? No. You don't like every woman like you love your wife, correct? So all the Jews are united. So you're not a racist for loving the Jews more than others, because your neshamot are one. So love him like a human being. مثل یک آدم دوستش داشته باشین، نه مثل خودتون. خاصشون کسی بگه از غیر یهودی متنفر باش، it's wrong. اونا هم بنده خدا هستن. ولی یک یهودی رو مثل خودت، چون جزوی از خودت هست. So anyways, going a little bit further, just the last part. It's a very, very beautiful part, and actually shows the importance of Ahavat Yisrael. Honest to God, if we don't love any other Jew, no matter how religious we are, God is not one with us. That's the part that we're going to learn very soon. There's another story in the Gemara, Masechta Shabbos. The Gemara says that there was one time a guy that wanted to convert to Judaism. So he came to Shammai and he said, teach me the whole Torah as I stand on one foot. So Shammai was a strict guy. He had the neshama of a gvura, kicked him out of the synagogue. He says, come on. He's like a guy coming, make me a doctor, just tell me one sentence. You can't become a doctor. You got to go through college, for many years, universities. So this guy comes and says, make me a Jew as I stand on one foot. So Shammai kicked him out. He knew that, Hillel is a lot nicer, more tolerant. So he came to Hillel, he says, teach me the whole Torah. I made a mistake. Teach me the whole Torah as I stand on one foot. So Hillel told him, what's hateful to you, don't do to your friend. This is the entire Torah. The rest is an explanation. So he converted him and he said, okay, keep the Torah and learn the explanation later on. That's what it says. So Rashi has a question. Our commandments are divided to two parts. There's commandments between us and God, bein adam lemakom, and there's commandments bein adam lechaveiro, between me and another person. So what's hateful to you, don't do to others. that includes every commandment between human beings. Right? It's hateful to me to someone to say Lashon Hara or whatever, I don't know, scream at me or stab me in the back. But let me ask you, if I wear tzitzit, how does this explain what's hateful to you, don't do to others? This is not an explanation of that. Or keeping Shabbat. How does that explain what's hateful to you, don't do to others? I could say what's hateful to you, don't do to others, so I'm not going to scream at you because I don't like to be screamed at. Right? If let's say somebody owes me money, so I want him to pay me back. So what's hateful to you, don't do to others. I pay you if I owe you something. But how does mitzvot between us and God an explanation of that? So Rashi says, really what Hillel said wasn't exact. He says what Hillel said, lav dafka. When he said it's the entire Torah, he only meant the part between people. That's one explanation Rashi gives. So here the Tzemach Tzedek says, no, really, if there is Ahavat Yisrael, that includes the entire Torah. How's that? You know, the Sephardim are very, very used to this. When we pray, before any prayer, any mitzvah, we say, Leshem, Yichud, Kucha, Berichu, Shchinte, right? I'm doing this mitzvah to unite HaKadosh Baruch Hu with his Shechina. Now, what is Kucha Berichu? What's Shechina? Seemingly, you know, if you don't study Kabbalah, they're the same. There's Kucha Berichu, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shechina is God's presence. What's the difference? It looks like there's a separation and uniting them. So basically, Kabbalah explains, Kucha Berichu means God the infinite. Not the way God reveals himself in the world. There's a part of God, you know, it's here too, but it's infinite. Shechina comes from the word of shochen, dwelling. Which part of God dwells in this world? Simple terms, our souls. The godly soul is a part of God that comes into our body. So the Shechina refers to the neshamot in the body. Kucha Berichu is actually referring to God the infinite. So basically, when we do a mitzvah, we are revealing God the infinite and we're uniting it with our souls. Your souls get connected to God infinite. In simple, that's what Leshem Yichud Kucha Berichu means. Correct? So now, as we know, the way God deals with us is the way we deal with each other. Right? The way I deal to another person, that's the way God deals with us. So if all the Jews are connected, we are all united. We are all one. So since we are united, God is united with us too. You want a shortcut that God should be united with the Jews, love everybody. Since I love everybody, I'm one with them, so God is one with the Jewish people. Every mitzvah that we do, you see, every mitzvah that we do, it only reveals one small aspect of this unity. This is going to be a difficult part. I was one time in Russia, we were teaching, you know, the Persian families that were there. So one guy says, you know, I don't show my wife how much money I have in my account. Because if I show my wife how much money I have, then I can't pay the mortgage. I have to buy her jewelry. So I said, what kind of unity is this? You hide things from your spouse? That's not unity. You get what I'm saying? If somebody trusts his wife, he really loves his wife, so to speak, so there is a connection, then actually you're going to share your ideas, you're going to share your bank account, you're going to go on vacation together. You know, they say joke that there was one time a person went to Hawaii with his wife. So in the beginning, when they went, they were sitting next to each other. On the way back, they were sitting on two other parts of the airplane. So the same stewardess was there. So it says, what happened? You went on a vacation that you're coming back separated, you know? It says, yeah, I went to Hawaii, we got into a fight. You know, so now when they're coming back, they sit on two different parts. Again, if there is unity, if I really love my wife or my husband, just like myself, then I share everything with her. My ideas, my feelings. I love going to dinner with her. I love to take a walk. I'm not going to hide any accounts. If there's really no love, even when you talk to your spouse, I'm sorry, it's a fake speech. It's just on the external. So when all the Jews are united, right, we are all one, God is one with us. If there is hatred, God forbid, amongst the Jews, so then God is not one with us. So what happens when let me just go back. When you study Torah, let's say if there's unity amongst the Jews, when you study Torah, because God is one with us, then by studying Torah, God's wisdom gets united with you. When you give tzedakah, charity, which is act of chesed, because I give chesed to another Jew, so God's chesed is revealed to me. But that's as long as there is unity. If there's no unity amongst the Jews, So then God is also separate. God separates himself from us, chas v'shalom. So when I study Torah, God's wisdom doesn't really become one with me. When I give tzedakah, that doesn't really reveal God's kindness upon me. So this is what Hillel meant. The entire Torah is what's hateful to you, don't do to other. Meaning love the other person just like yourself. If you love him, God is already united with you. God is one with the Jewish people. Everything else is only an explanation. You study Torah, God's wisdom gets one with you. You keep Shabbat, another level gets revealed. When you put on tefillin, whatever it is, so God, you know what I'm saying? God's wisdom becomes one with you. But if there's no unity, they really don't accomplish much. And as brought the example of a husband and wife, if they really love each other, everything else automatically is shared. If there is no love, they're just living like roommates, so then there's no unity at all. We're going to finish with this. That Tzemach Tzedek actually says we understand with this. Why, if there is, God forbid, no unity amongst the Jews, right? If there is Lashon Hara, why do they get punished for all their sins? So the Chafetz Chaim gives a very simple explanation. It says when we do sins, we don't get punished as long as the Satan doesn't accuse us, right? It's like democracy. So as long as we don't say Lashon Hara, so when the Satan comes on Rosh Hashanah to accuse the Jews, God says, I don't want to hear. Jews don't accuse each other, they don't hear accusation, so Satan has no permission to accuse us. But the moment there is Lashon Hara amongst the Jews, so then Satan's power is unleashed. To such an extent that the Chafetz Chaim brings from Zohar HaKadosh, that if I speak Lashon Hara here, an innocent person some other place in the world gets hurt. He brings it from the Zohar. So according to Chassidus, actually is a lot deeper. Because if the Jews are united, we are one with each other, God is one with us. The Gemara says nobody sees their own fault, right? I could be a liar, but I'm comfortable. I don't care. I'm a nice guy. I could, you know what I'm saying? I've seen people, that are not religious. Like, I'm not making fun of them. So how come you don't keep Shabbat? So I don't keep Shabbat. I'm a nice guy. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't bother him that he's not keeping something. Let's say if I lie one time, I don't care if I lied. Unfortunately, when somebody else lies, it really makes me get burnt. I really get upset. So the Gemara says because the person doesn't see his own shortcomings. I don't see it. Not that I don't know about it. I know it, but because I love myself, I cover it up. It doesn't bother me to hate myself. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a negative reaction to my shortcomings. When somebody else has that negative reaction, if you don't learn what the Arizal says, you have to love everybody just like yourself. So then I have a negative reaction to him. So when all the Jews are united and God is one with us, no matter how much sin we do between us and God, it's a very harsh word to say, but God doesn't see the sin because he's one with us, and a person doesn't see his own shortcomings. So God doesn't look at the sins as if it's his own sin. So he looks it over. If there is separation amongst the Jews, then God is not united with us. He's separated. If he's not one, so then he doesn't cover over the sins of the Jewish people because he's looking at somebody else. So again, the Chafetz Chaim uses more of a revealed explanation. The Satan will accuse us. Ovich Chassidus goes a little bit further because if you're united, God is one with us, so a person doesn't see his own faults. So it's a very, no, I'm saying that's why and if you want to really, it's not just a Hasidic philosophy. This is exactly the Gemara that Rabbi Mapari mentioned at the beginning of the lecture. The Gemara says in times of the second Beit HaMikdash, the Jews were religious. It says they were oskim beTorah. Here's the question: why do you say oskim beTorah? Let him say lomdim Torah. You don't do business with Torah. You're not. Esek means business. You don't do business with the Torah. Should have said lomdim Torah. How come he says oskim? So here the previous Lubavitch Rebbe says a businessman doesn't sit in his store. If there's no customers, you run out, you bring customers. Today with the internet, you actually find customers on the internet. A successful businessman doesn't sit in his store waiting for people to come. He actually hustles to bring other people. In times of second Beit HaMikdash, wasn't that, in a comfortable way. They went 1 hour in the kollel, they learned Torah. No, their business was Torah. In the middle of the business, they stole from their free time to go study. You're talking about a very high level of learning. They dealt with learning like a businessman. So they were really high in learning. They did mitzvot. So the Gemara says if there were such holy people, why did the Beit HaMikdash get destroyed? So Mapari brought from the Gemara because that's sinat chinam. If there is no unity, no matter how religious the people are, how much Torah they learn, there could be oskim beTorah. Nevertheless, that doesn't guarantee that no punishments will come. So again, according to Chafetz Chaim, is because the Satan will accuse us, and according to an explanation of the Tzemach Tzedek, is because once there is separation amongst the Jews, God is separated from us, God forbid, and therefore He sees every sin that the Jewish people do. Basically, we're going to stop here. I hope it was useful, and honest.